38 minutes is the second episode after the two-part opening of the show, so we are extremely early days here. And it is unfortunately a good episode that's been marred by a terrible decision, which we will definitely get to soon. Things start solidly with the flagship team heading back to Atlantis. Shepard's in the back with some sort of bug attached to his neck. It's a good dramatic hook. Unremovable parasite, that's always a good source of drama. And a common fixture of Adam Sandler movies. Weir is hesitant about bringing that onto Atlantis since, hell, we've all seen Alien, but there aren't a lot of options here. Again, these are early days. They know very little about the Pegasus galaxy, so even bringing Shepard to a different planet in order to be treated wouldn't really be an option. It'd be a field treatment, no shelter setup or anything, and if things went wrong, it could wind up spreading this to somebody else's world. If they're going to screw up, well, it might as well affect themselves rather than innocent people. But they have worse problems than facehuggers. You ever try finding a tow truck in space? After the titles, McKay pieces together what happened, as half of the jumper has dematerialized. They're able to pull back all of Ford when they grab his arm, as opposed to just the arm. That would have made this ghastly situation even worse. But solving the problem is going to be, well, a bit of an uphill climb. They fill Atlantis in on the situation, but Rodney is impatient. Still, Ford explains that the mission they had been on, investigating the planet with the Wraith base, well, it resulted in finding a base gone, just completely. Either they got a visit from the Borg, or their base was actually a big-ass ship. But if so, there are a few who missed the bus, because the team was attacked. Rodney draws the line there. There's a reason for that, though. The episode is called 38 minutes. 38 minutes is the maximum length of time that a Stargate can be maintained before it shuts down on its own. When that happens, everything in the front of the ship is going to cease to exist, which is bad for them. But don't worry, everybody gets to share in the bad news. Once that happens, the back is going to be open to the vacuum of space. All in all, it's a bad day to be on this jumper. Though I don't think that this day was winning any high marks for Shepard no matter how it turned out. Meanwhile, Weir has had a team of smart people assembled to try to figure it out. But one person is absent. A new face. Zelenka. New for us. Obviously, he didn't just show up when they're cut off from Earth. He's busy checking over sequence combinations in an actual jumper to discover a way of getting the manual control for those things out there to retract so the ship can fit through. Rodney's doing the same thing, but his is more dangerous, since they're operating essentially at random. And there are a lot of things that can make this situation worse. Opening the back door, triggering a self-destruct. The way their day is going, the ancients could have built in some kind of anti-eyeball ray that leaves them spending the last few minutes stumbling around screaming and clutching at their empty sockets. Zelenka proved such a wonderful addition to the scene that he went from one-shot character to pretty much a staple of the show, so good on him. Back on the jumper, the situation is bad enough that Shepard asks them to just cut the bug off. But as pointed out, that hasn't worked up until now. There's no reason to suddenly expect a different result, especially considering
everything we did just hurt you more.
Flashbacks show this happened on the way back after the Wraith showed up. Shepard provided cover fire for them all to get back to the jumper, but he ran into one of these things on a web. Obviously, their attempts to remove it failed, and now he's stuck here, paralyzed, in a way that a Wraith might do it. All in all, that's not the kind of tick you get off with a hot matchstick or paint it with nail polish. I look forward to your letters to me on that topic. Well, this leads us to the terrible decision, which takes up a significant chunk of this review because it so significantly harms this series. The team of eggheads are debating something when Dr. Weir shows up, and so they explain the situation. Kavanaugh is concerned that with the system's obvious damage, there is a chance that meddling with this could cause the jumper's power core to explode. So his position is that they activate the force field, just in case, and take it down if they come up with a way to get it to come through. The other members of the team don't agree. Essentially, it's more likely that they'll wind up slamming the jumper into a force field than they are to prevent this catastrophe. Since Kavanaugh is alone in his view, Weir sides with the rest of the team. All well and good. But they can't leave well enough alone. On a list of episodes that are relevant for Dr. Weir's character, this one is included because it shows her having to deal with scientists and indigenous people challenging her authority. And Kavanaugh will indeed challenge her leadership. Let's see why.
I thought it was important to point out the risk.
Fine, you did. Now please, worry a little bit more about their lives and less about your own ass.
Perhaps because she's bad at it. Or at the very least, she needs to learn how to handle crises. What she just did is neither constructive nor even justified. Even if she's right and Kavanaugh is afraid that they're all going to die, that would not be how you handle this. Any leader wanting to get the best from their team who thought that that was weighing on his mind would have a brief, quiet conversation about how they know he's scared, but right now those people are counting on him to save their lives. They need him to do this in spite of his fear, to be a hero. That's motivating people to get the best out of them, which is what a leader should do. I mean, hell, it's basic diplomacy. And let me remind you, Dr. Weir's backstory is she's our expert at diplomacy. If she's America's expert, no wonder we've spent 18 years trying to turn Afghanistan into a crater.
And you just busted me like a private.
Don't be so dramatic. Besides, the Air Force doesn't have privates.
Neither do I. You just cut them off. Right in front of my research team.
He's out of line, but he's right.
I can't emphasize enough how serious a blunder this is, because this episode doesn't show her rising up to hold this place together during a crisis. It shows her, when the pressure is on, retreating to the position of dictator. I'm not referring to this scene, but rather when Kavanaugh calls her out on this in a later scene. She threatens to have him exiled and makes clear with her glare that that is not hyperbole. She will effectively hand down a death sentence for the crime of not taking her bullshit with a smile. I'm not saying that Kavanaugh was in the right to go and confront her during the crisis. That was not showing good judgment. But hey, that seems to be the corporate culture that she wants to create, doesn't it? Use bad judgment. Leadership strength is not, I have a hammer and I'm not afraid to use it. And leadership certainly isn't, I'll belittle you in front of your own team. Kavanaugh is going to become the series' butt monkey as a way to justify this, but it has to go to further and further extremes to achieve that because his response isn't actually unreasonable. The only unreasonable aspect of it, again, is the timing. But otherwise, he's fully justified in asking, what the fuck did you just do? He submits a report that Dr. Weir is an unfit commander, and based upon his personal experience, she is. Oh yeah, she gets along great with other people, but that's only a sign that certain people are favored, and those she doesn't are going to be treated like dirt. I mean, keep in mind that at one point his displeasure with her leadership is going to be enough to justify torturing him for information for a crime that he's innocent of. The way to prove that someone is wrong, and try to follow me on this, is not to show over and over that they're right. But hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Here are other people who have similar thoughts on the topic. 6 common characteristics of poor leadership. We have all witnessed a leader get upset when issues arise. That's natural. Good leaders know cooler heads prevail, offering constructive criticism in an appropriate one-on-one setting. But a bad leader berates employees in a group setting. Instead of helping employees learn from mistakes, their behavior only alienates people and causes resentment. 15 traits of the worst leaders? They don't censor what they say. 6 characteristics of a bad leader everyone hates? Being in a position of power doesn't mean abusing these rights. A true leader will make a conscious effort to inspire, invest time in developing their team, and help them be the best they can be. 39 traits of a bad boss. Bullies. Threats and intimidation are the way they manage. Others from the list? Doesn't praise or encourage. Creates a culture of distrust and fear. Shows no loyalty, respect, or appreciation. Manages through fear. Top 7 qualities of bad leadership. A great leader understands empathy and knows how to approach their employees in a courteous manner. Bad leaders all lack empathy and never show respect to their employees. They are usually blinded by their ego and cannot see how much their employees despise them. I'm emphasizing this point because this is the kind of terrible mistake that you can't come back from a writing standpoint, I mean. The show seemed to realize that it screwed up because guess what? This time, before they had a chance to think about the implications of what they did, Kavanaugh is going to be the one to save the day. And that's pretty much the last time they're going to allow him to be the hero. They'll keep bringing him back just so they can tell us how terrible he is in order to retroactively justify Dr. Weir's behavior instead of showing her cracking under pressure and turning into a little Hitler. Having your character do what she did is fine if you want to show that the character is trying to rise to challenges that they never signed up for, or that they are emotionally compromised in that moment and they let it get the better of them. Instead, they have her doubling down on her bad decision. That's a sign that someone doesn't have the chops to do the job. Taylor's people come by because in their culture, when one knows they are facing death, there is a short ritual performed. But she refuses because that could hurt morale. This episode is the first to imply that there is sexual tension between Weir and Shepard, which explains both of these acts. But the way the episode presents things only makes it seem like she cares about these people, therefore, it doesn't matter how she treats anyone else. It's things like this that make me often feel towards Atlantis, you people deserve the bad things that happen to you. Alright, well, maybe not that. I'm just speaking in general. They're trying out different things to try to get the bug to let go, but after applying water, the thing freaked out. Though it's possible the water mixed with one of the other things that was dumped on it to get it so upset. In the confusion, McKay gets bumped, meaning the controls get bumped, meaning the ship gets bumped. So now, if they fail, the doors sealing the rear of the compartment are going to be breached, and instead of a slow asphyxiation from which they could possibly be rescued, they're going to face full-bore ejection into space. So I'm going to go ahead and slot pouring water on the bug under the unhelpful category. Ford finally suggests the obvious. Push Shepard through the gate so that he'll stop suffering, and if this works, they can save him on arrival like originally planned. And if it doesn't, well, they're all pretty much screwed anyway. But Beckett doesn't like the idea of sending that thing through a gate, so they decide to kill him, which is a plan at this point in the episode I could get behind. Stop his heart, though, and then they'll restart it once the creature lets go. It's not a bad idea, but Ford can't get it started again, so it's right back to tossing him through the gate. Or rather, carrying him. I guess Taylor's had enough with this trip. Then again, Weir has more bad leadership for us, micromanaging about something that she knows nothing about.
Still got over 24 circuits I haven't tried.
Don't be so methodical. Just pick one at random.
If I do that, I run the risk of attempting to activate the same circuit twice.
Just try.
I'm telling you, there's no way I can...
I am so glad that didn't work because I really hate it when stupid ideas work purely by chance. Because the odds of any particular connection being the right one are the same whether it's random or methodical, there's no reason to do it randomly. What's more, as Rodney pointed out, there's actually a worse chance because you might wind up hitting the same one more than once. Fewer rolls of the dice when you don't get many dice rolls. There's a reason that we apply logic instead of just doing things all willy-nilly. There's a reason you never saw an episode of House where he says, since the patient is dying and we don't know why, let's stop this whole thing with logic and reasoning and we'll just try random treatments out of the book. Who knows? Perhaps this man's life will be saved by a pap smear. So yeah, Rodney got the right one in the end, doing it his way. Good for him. It's closed now, except they have no forward momentum, and they have just a couple minutes left to think of a way to move forward. And that, as I said, is when Kavanaugh saves the day, coming up with the idea of blowing the rear hatch to have enough thrust from the air to float them through. Enough to make it back before the wormhole shuts down, anyway. Ford risks his life to do just that, so good on him. They make it through, Shepard is saved, cue sexual tension with Dr. Weir, the end. 38 minutes is slightly important in that the bug is introduced that will be relevant in some ways, and it introduces us to the character of Zelenka, and explains the reason Kavanaugh and Weir don't like each other, which of course means that Kavanaugh isn't liked by anyone in her little clique because Atlantis is fucking high school. 38 minutes gets a stamp of Death Star reactor port, in that it's an otherwise effective thing that's undermined by one serious design flaw. Weir's handling of Kavanaugh colors her presence throughout the rest of this episode, so that what could be dismissed otherwise seems to form a pattern, of allowing emotional attachments to underline her ability to lead in a crisis. I made the point in The Rising of Dr. Weir needing to lead from the front on their first mission to let the military members of her team know that she wasn't afraid, because it might be important going forward, and that sexism might be an issue she would have to deal with and need to overcome. Well, let me be clear. There's nothing quite so sexist as a male writer worried about sexism. It all comes across the same way. Oh, I'm accepting of women, but I know those knuckle-dragging throwbacks out there will not take someone with a vagina seriously. The only way that they'll do that is if I prove how strong she is, and she can only possibly be strong by dressing down some male, preferably a much taller one. That way the audience will think, wow, look how strong she is standing up to him. If you want to look at the traits of desirable leaders, you're not going to find strength. What you're going to find at the top is communication, and very closely following that, interpersonal skills. The very act of trying to make your leader seem like someone who should be followed undermines their ability to be perceived as an effective leader. Contrast this with President Rosalind on Battlestar Galactica for You Can't Go Home Again. In that, she dresses down both Adama and Lee, but that was exactly what the pair needed to sort themselves out. She didn't need to drop the hammer to establish she's a leader. She'd already established herself as a leader. She dropped the hammer because the situation finally warranted it. The audience was firmly on board with her because they both did need a smack upside the head to recognize what they were doing. I know I belabor the point, but one thing that has always bothered me is when writers don't trust the audience. And there's nothing that says more I don't trust you than feeling the need to somehow prove that someone is strong regardless of context. Laura Rosalind was in a situation where something was attempting to undermine what it was she was trying to achieve. That's a situation that calls for strength, and she brought it, and she got respect from the audience for it. Dr. Weir, in this situation, it didn't warrant it, and she doesn't get it. On the contrary, if you're in a life or death situation, you're not hoping that the person in charge feels they have something to prove.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm told you have something of a Klingon.